Good morning and welcome to the news review segment of the Power Breakfast Show. My name is Charles Odhiambo, and in my panel this morning, Advocate Karanja Kabage, also contesting the Njoro parliamentary seat as an independent candidate. With us after quite some time, Mheshimiwa Ken Okoth, Member of Parliament for Kibra and gunning for the same seat on an ODM ticket. On my immediate right, Mheshimiwa Kipruto Arap Kirwa. Now, I am a bit confused. You have to help me here. Which one is more senior, the Deputy Leader ANC or Senate candidate Trans Nzoia?
Well, I think the current one is
Senate candidate Trans Nzoia. So it's bigger.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And of course, as always, a pleasure to have you, Mheshimiwa Kimani Wamatangi, Senator Kiambu County, and also candidate for the same position on Jubilee ticket. A very quick look at the day list today before we look into details of what we have. Front page of the Standard, Raila explains to Kenyans why they have no unga, and he calls for the sacking of cabinet secretaries Willie Bet together with Mwangi Kiunjuri and their principal secretaries. He says the cartels around somebody in the government is frustrating the importation of cheap maize from Ethiopia and demands Bet and Kiunjuri resignation. Quite a sad story. Page 4 of the Standard, a doctor's baby dies as nurses cut off oxygen. This is in Kakamega, an 8-month-old infant. This is together with another 10 people who have died across the country following the nurses strike that enters day 3 today. Campaigns continue. Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto go to southern Nyanza and western Kenya as the NASA Brigade unleash their committee that will be in charge of the Presidential Secretariat. And quite an interesting story, sad indeed, the death of one billionaire, Adnan Khashoggi, who made Kenya his playground. It said that he once was tagged as the richest man in the world, and he would have no problem spending up to 25 million shillings a day on lavish parties. More details on page 12 and 13 of the Standard. As we look at the inside pages, the story about the deaths following the nurses strike, page 4. Page 6 has stories about Uhuru and Ruto flying into the storm as ethnic tension simmers. And now page 7 has a story about the Pharmacy and Poisons Board raising the red flag of increased use of fake sex-enhancing drugs in the Kenyan markets. Also of interest here is 5 MPs threatened to arm residents. A section of MPs from Northeastern, this is quite interesting, have threatened to arm locals if the government fails to provide security in the region. They gave the state 2 months to end terror attacks. The MPs are named there, and we'll be looking at that story in details. Reports from across the country, county politics and all the rest have also been captured on the inside pages of the Standard. The Daily Nation has a story about money in politics, battle of the skies. There are over 60 choppers buzzing around, burning about 2,833 shillings a minute in the country, where 20 million people are below the poverty line and live on less than 100 shillings a day. Quite interesting story. It costs about 170,000 to hire a chopper. It costs about 7,961 to pack it in the hangar, and many, many more costs. Doctors' strike continues to bite. At least 10 people have died following the nurses' strike, across the country. The story about Jubilee allegedly creating food crisis, claims by Raila Odinga, the NASA leader. Back page, Uhuru Kenyatta says no one will die of a pulse on my watch. Story about Adnan Khashoggi, the renowned world billionaire who was passed on at age 82 because of what is said as Parkinson syndrome in London, is also captured on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Of interest also is the issue of Iyala. And now Kennedy Kalonzo, the 30-year-old son to former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, says, yes, Kalonzo is my father, but so what? I am Kennedy. June 23rd is the D-Day. This is the day the Court of Appeal will be issuing a judgment following the case that was filed by IEBC seeking clarification on the issue of the announcement of results for presidential elections as is indicated in the law. These are some of the stories that we'll be looking at this morning. Taifa Leo, Ruto aketi na waasi usiku. Naibu Rais William Ruto alifanya mkutano Jumanne usiku na wagombea viti vya Uasin Gishu, Nandi na Elgeyo Marakwet kupitia tikiti ya Jubilee katika hoteli ya Boma mjini Eldoret. Kwenye mkutano huo uliochukua saa 2, Bwana Ruto alionya viongozi wa Rift Valley dhidi ya kuchochea wananchi kwa njia inayoweza kuhujumu juhudi za serikali ya Jubilee kuunganisha wa Kenya. Gentlemen, that is just small look into what we have in the papers today. But of interest, of course, is the story on page 1 and page 10 of the Standard, and of course the back page of the Daily Nation. We started it last week, the issue of maize, and now Raila Odinga says the government has refused to import cheap maize from Ethiopia.
Well, I don't know the details, but I do remember similar occasions have arisen in the past, and when they do, you must think of how to strategically import in a way that you reduce the cost of logistics, because as of now, to transport one bag of maize, let's say from Nairobi to Moyale, may cost close to 2,700, and therefore we thought it prudent at the time that I was in the ministry that we import 10,000 bags of maize from Ethiopia, southern Ethiopia, and they were going, the depot of National Cereals and Produce Board that is supposed to be the supply depot became now the depot to receive the maize from Ethiopia, and farmers just did cross-border business, and we were able to solve that problem in that part of the country. The other thing is we've been doing cross-border with Uganda, although now there's no maize from Uganda, and also cross-border with Tanzania, and it works perfectly well, given the fact that to transport some of these commodities costs more than the price of the commodity itself in situ. So these are some of the challenges, and more important is the fact that the government never seemed to have foreseen that this thing was going to be, despite all the predictions. In June last year, the government was informed that there was going to be drought in the Horn of Africa, and towards November, when they purchased the maize, they only purchased 800,000 bags.
Well, that appears to be in contrast to what was said by the Deputy President. My director, Robert, if you can hear me, could we have the clip on Ugali shortage fury?
Okay.
If you can hear me, Robert, could we have the clip on Ugali shortage fury?
According to Odinga, the current food situation falls at the doorstep of President Uhuru Kenyatta. As such, it is incumbent upon him to find quick solutions to it.
President Uhuru Kenyatta must immediately get on the earliest flight to Ethiopia to ask his counterpart to sell us maize. It will be cheaper and it will get here faster.
Odinga adding that imported maize from Mexico, currently expected in the country, had taken too long and brought in at the whims of private millers. Then, as a presidential candidate, also insisted that the food shortage was artificial, since the Deputy President William Ruto had last year exuded confidence that the country had enough maize stocks when initial alarm on stockouts was raised.
Wale ambao wanasema ya kwamba hatuna mahindi ya kutosha ni walaghai, na ni watu ambao wanataka kutuletea mambo ya zamani ya kujaribu kutafuta njia ya kulete ama kuimport mambo ya mahindi kuje Kenya. Hatuwezi kukubali mahindi ya kutoka nje kwa sababu tuko na mahindi ya kutosha katika taifa letu la Kenya.
Speaking in Kirinyaga County, Mr. Ruto accused millers of acting like cartels, saying the National Cereals and Produce Board stores had 10 million bags of maize.
Odinga is now asking the government to also allow maize imports from Ethiopia by traders, noting that out of the 50,000 metric tons expected from the neighboring country, only half had found way into the market. The rest default in favor of Mexican maize.
Immediately fire the CS and PS of Agriculture and the CS of Devolution and Planning for deliberately misleading Kenyans on the farming situation. 3. Remove the responsibility of importing maize from private millers and entrust it on the Strategic Grain Reserve Fund.
Nothing is far from it. it is a known fact that the hunger situation is a regional matter not confined to Kenya. As at now, Kenya is at a better position in terms of prices that are offering for unga.
But the government says Odinga is being minimal with the truth in his assertions. In a rejoinder, Agriculture CS Willie Bett, one of those who Odinga asked the president to send home for mismanaging the situation, says they were well prepared.
As we speak now, we are offloading 33,000 metric tons. On 15, another ship is docking with 42,000 metric tons. So as we go along now, the situation is normalizing as far as the flow of maize is concerned. And that is why I'm appealing to Kenyans that they have no reason whatsoever to panic buy.
But now assuring the country that the food situation is under control and that maize importation into the country was not a preserve of few individuals or cartels. Dennis
Ocheng with insight in the current situation on maize. Mheshimiwa Karanja Kabage, what really is the issue? This thing doesn't seem to go away and it keeps taking new twists and turns every other new day.
I think food and politics, they are unlikely to be divorced. And especially in an environment like we have of August 8, 2017. But to me, it goes beyond that. I have said here before, this country must think deep and reflect deeply about what is food in the context of our independence as a people. We must not plan with a short-time horizon when it comes to a question of food is a permanent, is a constant. We'll always need it. So whenever we are planning for anything, we must take a mental flight and think 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, because there will be Kenyans even way after we are dead. Now, to be having perennial issue of food shortage, to me it challenges the capacity of this nation to think in terms of what does inform our sovereignty.
But what really went wrong, Wakili, because on 24th June, none other than the Deputy President, you saw the clip there, said there is enough food, and anybody saying we need to import food, ni mlagai. 1 year.
You know what I'm trying to say is this.
Does it mean we didn't see the imminent drought at that time?
Well, I think it's quite obvious that there may have been, or certainly there was, some misinformation. Either the Deputy President was not properly briefed by his people. I think that is quite obvious, because you cannot make that kind of assertion without having the wrong information. There's no question about that. And that's what I'm saying. The challenges we have had, as Mheshimiwa Kilo, who was a Minister for Agriculture, will agree and attest to the fact that this country is not having a liberation, that we are having a challenge. We have had this challenge over the years.
We are living for the day.
We are living, it's like we are living from hand to mouth. I remember in 1979, correctly, when during the Moise presidency, we had a very serious challenge. And I remember at that time he went to Washington, and we also had a crisis because the Americans were trying to do, having what is called, they're trying to deploy what is called rapid deployment force. And Jimmy Carter then was the president. And at that point in time, I remember the issue was Kenya is asking for food, right? Instead of asking for more than food, because the Americans were leading at that point in time.
Kenya is asking for fish rather than to be taught how to
we were asking for to be given food.
Mheshimiwa Ken Okoth, should we
let me finish this because I think it's important. Instead of really asking for major infrastructural development and the Americans were ready at that point in time to do it. But we are here asking about food, right? And to me, when I look at the history of our country in terms of how do we deal with the challenge of food, I think we need to think very, very strategically and not have this problem of food, because if a nation cannot feed itself, then it calls to question, who are you in the committee of nations?
1979, we had a chance to be taught how to get food. We blew the chance. Fast forward to now, should we get maize from Mexico or should we get maize from Ethiopia?
In 1979, I was 1 year old and I was still breastfeeding. God bless my mother, and that's the only food. That was the food I knew from my mom. So I'm still young and I appreciate that. But let me bring you to now. All this history we're being told is important, but also not relevant to what the Kenyans are facing today. And we're in the context of an election, and Kenyans must make a choice. We were told choices have consequences. You choose a government that, on the food issue, is either the government was deliberately lying and cooking up this artificial shortage to profit by it, in which case it is criminal, or the government was incompetent, did not plan ahead. We are told there is a food crisis in the region. Well, why didn't you plan better than Somalia or Malawi? By telling us that even Malawi is having food problems or Somalia is having food problems, it's called comfort to Kenyans. It doesn't add ugali to our table. So either there was a criminal conspiracy to create an artificial shortage, which you shouldn't vote for criminals who create artificial shortage, or number two, there was negligence and incompetence. They were not sensitive enough and prepared enough, because, and I'll tell you fairly, Jubilee Manifesto of 2013 talked about they'll bring 2 million acres under irrigation within the first 2 years. We are into year number 5, they haven't done it. They promised to increase the strategic food reserve, to diversify it from grain only to all kinds of foods, from 22% of our consumption need to 40% within the first 4 years. They have not got us there. So either by their manifesto they have been incompetent and they have failed. They have fallen short of the standards they promised to deliver, or, God forbid, I don't want to think all these negative things about our leaders, but if really there was actually a cartel organizing and mismanaging the affairs of the country so that they can profit by it, then it's just criminal. Either way, Jubilee should not be voted back. This is what I'm saying. They were not competent enough to protect us on the most basic of things, provide us with food and make sure there's a food supply that's affordable. Or number two, and the pattern has been there. You've just played the story of the deputy president saying, how Aniwala guy, we have enough food, and now saying, no, you can't choose both stories. You can't have it either way. And Jubilee has had this pattern. I'll give you on free secondary education, which is a hot button issue. In 2016 and in 2015, both times the president declared himself. He was at the 100th anniversary of Kisii High School. And he promised 6 months from that time, Form 1 would be free. That was supposed to be January 2016 last year. There was no free Form 1. Right now, last year again, in the middle of 2016, 6 months after his promise had not been fulfilled, he said by 2019, today, in the midst of a campaign, 58 days to the elections, the president is telling us we will have free secondary education by January 2018. So which are the dates have been shifted? We know the date of January 2016 was untrue. It was a lie, unfulfilled, or was never meant to be fulfilled. They failed to fulfill it. The goal of 2018 that we are being told now, I don't think we can take as credible, because I sit on the budget committee and I sit on the education committee. There is no budget that has been put in the budget that we passed now to make sure by that time there will be money in January 20 for all. The last time I raised that, you can do that incremental. So you cannot deliver things, and Jubilee has to be honest with us and just tell us which part of the budget will you adjust. Is it the corruption in the Ministry of Interior and Security sector? Is it the overinflation of tenders such as the SGR, which was inflated by over 100 billion? Those are the types of questions we need to know. will you invest in Kenyans finally? And why haven't you done it for 4 years? And to me, I say Kenyans, don't vote for people who have invested in things and invested in opportunities for a few 45 billionaires in this country to make a ton of money while living outside 45 million poor Kenyans.
The last time I raised the issue of budget reallocation for education in implementing free secondary education, I was told there is a provision of the supplementary budget, and we'll be looking at that in detail.
But nobody, as a principle, budgets for main things in the supplementary. You know, you don't budget for your rent in your pocket money. You budget for your rent in the main budget.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? You don't just think of it offhand later on.
Senator Wamatangi, quite a number of issues here. Before we started the show, I was asking you when you last ate ugali, and you told me as late as last night.
Yes.
Apparently, that is not the case with all Kenyans, and we see the politics playing out.
I know, yes. I had kept a few packets.
You are super safe.
And we eat, reservedly. But let me say two things. First, on that issue of unga and maize, especially the maize issue, I think we need to say to Kenyans clearly that, and frankly, that politicians are the wrong people to discuss either about the situation of maize right now, or even be expected to provide a solution to Kenyans, because, and especially coming at a time when most politicians, or rather all politicians, are facing a battle for survival in their political life and careers. What politicians will succeed in doing is twisting the discussion so that finally it is able to emotively excite the electorate they seek to get votes from. And that's why you find all manner of stories that let the president take a flight to Ethiopia. The question you'd want to be asking somebody saying that is, what deal has he cut in Ethiopia first? I mean, what is special in terms of either of quality of the maize in Ethiopia vis-a-vis the other places that he's
said it's cheaper.
Let me finish. Let me finish. It is common sense that if imported maize, sea transport is 2 times cheaper, is halfway cheaper sea transport than land transport. And if you bought maize while you bring it by sea, you'd be cutting the cost of that maize by half. And secondly, it is not just about the distance you're talking about. You're talking also about quantities. You know, what quantities are you able to get logically? And lastly, you heard the minister there saying that indeed they are already offloading maize to take to various places for distribution. Why hasn't somebody who is interested in that debate go and read that or proof check it and see is it true that is there? Then that's what you'd bust, that this is not true. I'll tell you what. Remember when we had the maize being offloaded in Mombasa the other day, and there was all this talk about maize from South Africa, it was got from where, and then all of a sudden when the maize was offloaded, given to the millers, and they went on grinding it, and you know what the politicians, especially in the opposition NASA, were expecting? That they had a big deal now, a big story to take around and garner votes, because they thought it was going to be very expensive, only to find that there was a strategy or a plan to cushion Kenyans from that danger by having it subsidized. And when maize landed on the shelves of our supermarket at 90 shillings at that time, they had no other story, so they have to invent a new one. So I want to summarize that topic by saying this: let politicians leave those that are assigned that duty to deal with it. And Waziri is here. He will tell you when he was there whether he went to get his solutions from the councillors and the fellows around who play politics. These are issues that are supposed to be dealt with by the professionals in that area, but we can advise and talk on behalf of our people, but not make capital out of it. Lastly, on this issue that you've brought on what Ken was saying about education, can we be,
I would have loved
can we be reliable on just quickly, because he mentioned it, and whether is it feasible or truthful that it's possible to have free education. One, I want to remind Ken that budgets are normally passed in Parliament, not in the office of the President or in the executive. It is the committee he sits in. He said he sits in the Committee of Education. It is the one that actually would make those adjustments and proposals on behalf, because as elected members of Parliament, they are representatives of the interest of the people. And so that need that he talks about, that is so great and urgent. Let me finish, my friend. You are speaking. You spoke and I give you time.
Okay, Senator, go on.
See, when you sit in Parliament, you have been elected, for example, yourself in Kibra, probably by 200,000 people to represent more. Now, listen, my friend, and the team that you sit in, and this is the problem we have with legislators who take a ticket to go to Parliament, and then they want to go and sit on that side and start apportioning blame. So, in that committee where you sit, in education, the 12 of you as members should sit and ask on behalf of the people that you represent. It is an urgent need to have free education. So can we insert this? And let me tell you, what the executive does all the time is make proposals in that budget. The last word on where money goes lies in
so
Parliament.
Did the executive make a proposal for free secondary education?
I would definitely have to look at that, but if you listen to the words of the President, he was very, very clear. He did not say that we made and it was rejected. He gave a timeline. He said by 2018, and so
did he make the same promise?
This is now listen, let me tell you, Charles. Yes, the President could have made. I didn't watch that clip, but you know, I would take you on your word that yes, he did. You know, when you're planning in executive, especially as a president, of course you have a lot of interest to balance, and it can get to a time when you have either to forward or to postpone strategically on something that you want to implement. But if you're talking about education and making it free, you'll not be forgetting that in between then there have been other interventions in education. For example, making primary education fully free. Secondly, removing examination fees in our examinations in the education sector. So you cannot say that there have been no interventions. You know, I'll tell you, and especially this particular time between today and the 8th of August, if we are looking for solutions to take this country forward on issues that are long term, as Karanja Kabagi was saying, on issues that are not just pegged on the 8th of August, the solutions will hardly come from politicians. And I want to say, the worst scenario is especially you know, from NASA, from the NASA
Senator, in the interest of time, we need to move. You have executed that point, and we need to look at other issues. But I want to do a reality check.
Yes. According
to the Jubilee Manifesto, which he has quoted from, and tell us, because you may be privy to this, did the Jubilee government promise Kenyans ahead of last elections that they are going to improve the food situation in the country?
Absolutely.
Increase grain reserve?
Absolutely.
And put 2 million acres of land under irrigation into productive use?
I want to say
no, just a reality check. Did they?
I want to firmly say yes, an emphatic yes. Jubilee did. And I want to add another emphatic yes, that there has been a plan, action, and a way forward which is tangible and visible to ensure that happens. And as you take a shot at probably what the Deputy President was saying, because I saw you play that clip, remember that it was when he was Minister of Agriculture himself, when there were food surpluses, including in Tana, where farmers were complaining they could not even get storage to store their food. But in terms of improving strategic reserves for food, so remember
the Minister for Agriculture,
the pet project that these guys have been taking a shot at.
So the Minister of Agriculture is directly responsible for improvement in food production.
Well, you know, definitely the Minister of Agriculture will have to play a pivotal role in ensuring that those issues are addressed. But remember, and we had this discussion here with you the other day, agriculture in our new system is a fully devolved function.
Okay.
And so we now have to rope in our governors to provide solutions.
I see the other two gentlemen were quite quiet. I want us to take a short commercial break. When we come back, Ken Okoth will be responding to...
you didn't let me finish on the Jubilee Manifesto because you asked me a question that I wanted to answer.
We have to take a commercial break. Gentlemen, we are still here. We have time. Everybody will get a chance. We'll be right back after this. Senator Mheshimiwa Karanja Kabage, Mheshimiwa Ken Okoth, Mheshimiwa Kipruto Arap Kirwa, and Mheshimiwa Kimani Wamatangi shortly after this.